lady ears.
Yeah.
Are they pointy?
Welcome to Trekkie Tuesdays for the first episode of Season 2. In Netflix order, anyway, which is Amok time. By the time we got to Season 2, they realized that Spock was the actual main character of the show, and so they just start piling on they make him central, and they pile on the love interests. Got Kirk, McCoy, and Nurse Chapel fussing over him, and of course the woman who has been betrothed to him from childhood. We take the emotional repression that characterizes Vulcans and kind of take it to its logical conclusion, which is you can repress everything else, maybe, but you can't actually repress your sex drive because otherwise the species goes extinct. So instead of completely repressing it, they shroud it in shame and secrecy. They, through some kind of hocus pocus,
Amok.
get it so that it's only once every 7 years, and then they surround it with all of this ritual and music playing and general solemnity that in their minds anyways, like partitioning it off from the rest of everything else and is legitimized because it's ancient and all of that. But it's all just messed up cultural norms around sex stuff that literally establishes women as property and forces people into relationships they do not want to be in. But it still seems to be considered better than just letting Vulcans do what they want, because they're all just convinced that if they let Vulcans express their emotions, it would be terrible.
Sure, that all could be an explanation. I don't think it really makes any sense in terms of any of that, but I think it is silliness. I feel like this episode they were like, you know what, Spock's kind of the main character of this show, because he's kind of a hunk, more so than Kirk. But what if we took that to its actual extreme and we killed off Kirk and we instead replaced it with Spock? And suddenly it just isn't what you want it to be, they think, and then you'll be like so happy to see Kirk. That's what I think they were trying to do with this show. I think they're also trying to make a statement about male sexuality and this idea that we can try to tame masculinity and sexuality, but like at the end of the day, it's still gonna come through no matter how logical you try to be about it. People are still gonna have their desires, and they're still gonna act super irrationally when that time comes, when they need to get it out there, which is super gross. And that's when we see this scene where Spock is like super mean to Nurse Chapel because she sort of has a crush on him or something, and he like throws hot soup at her, and everyone's like, yeah, you know, that's a little unusual, but I mean, who cares? And I don't know, it's a little weird. I think it's trying to rationalize bad male behavior, as saying that even in the most logical species, this would exist. And if anything, it would be worse than what humans have, because the moment you try to, like, sequester this, like, kind of feeling, it's just gonna sprout out somewhere else and explode. And I just am kind of that's what I have to say to that. Some things that I liked about this episode are that you continue to see the love between McCoy, Kirk, and Spock in this weird triangle. And we have a lot of really silly moments in which Kirk and Spock have to fight with what I believe is the most useless looking weapon I've ever seen. Like, it doesn't seem very effective hurting your enemy. And they keep shaking all these bells.
Chekhov!
Chekhov has a toupee so that he can look like the monkeys.
Also, Chekhov has a Chekhov. Also, we've just introduced Chekhov.
Oh, did we not know Chekhov before?
No, Chekhov is new.
Chekhov is in this episode and has a pretty overdone bit with Sulu about how they keep changing course. There's a really cool lady character in this episode. There aren't often lady characters in positions of power, but it would make sense to me that it would be on the planet of Vulcan. Vulcan. She seems pretty cool and badass and mean, and highly irrational for a Vulcan, but
certainly talks her up a lot as like somehow embodying all of Vulcan. She holds a lot of sway within the Federation and turned down a position of power within the Federation. Kind of the start of where they start doing world building in the sci-fi sense.
I feel like it's super illogical the way that they talk about sex in this show. Like, I don't know, Kirk is trying to get it on with like everyone here, and Spock can't even like say the word sex, which is so, I think, not rational and weird, and it just doesn't seem in keeping with his character at all. Like, I think it makes sense that he would be embarrassed by it, but like, I feel like he would be embarrassed by it, but would like explain in detail quite quickly that, you know what, this is gonna happen, probably. It happens every 7 years, FYI.
I don't know. It made sense to me. Like Vulcan or Spock, and Spock specifically, is like somebody who is totally having emotions and thinks he can't acknowledge them, and he's just that way very intensely. And I think the taboo is not around saying sex or talking about sex in general terms. It's about explaining what's going on with Pon farr. Kirk is able to infer it because, I don't know, he comes from a human culture that has a history of, like, using euphemisms to talk about sex. Obviously, it's not rational. It's not like the behavior that we actually tend to want from people, although it is kind of scary when somebody breaks cultural norms and starts talking about stuff that they're not, that's supposed to be considered personal, because you wonder what other norms they're going to break. I don't know.
Well, I just don't think it's rational, because, like, why? I mean, there's a lot of reasons. It's not like he could have said, like, you know, if you don't get me to Vulcan, I'm going to die, and, like, explain why. And, like, it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't keep any sense. No sense. None. Is my opinion. I feel like it's an interesting idea that they like keep in future generations of Star Trek, which kind of makes sense. I think like it's an odd idea to have like the most rational person suddenly not be rational anymore. But like I think the overall like implications of what they're trying to say are a little like I don't like that. Like I feel like I don't know.
It works on maybe a less slightly less politically charged level for me if you think of it as not being about lust in general, but being about puberty in particular. Which I imagine like a lot of I imagine a lot of the viewers of Star Trek, you know, puberty is like a recent memory for them. At the very least, and yeah, puberty is it is pretty freaky, and you do, like Spock says at one point, I had hoped I would be spared this, and you do. I feel like you do kind of hope. Okay, yeah, I know intellectually that this is going to happen to me, but I don't want to actually start wanting things that I don't want right now. Like maybe it won't happen to me, and I mean, I don't know. So it like starts off as this confusing biological thing that makes you really moody and be an asshole, and then gets turned into this elaborate, horrible ritual that isn't what you want, but that's the culture, and you feel like you can't talk about it, and you feel like you can't actually get it to where you want, and you don't really understand what you want, and you can't tell your friends about it.
Yeah, but I don't think this is a coming of age story. I feel like this is like I feel like it's more about desire and stuff. Like I don't think it's you know like Spock is already grown.
Well, I mean, I think because it's science fiction, we get to have something that is a coming of age story, but with the main character as an adult.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I guess it works a little better as puberty, but I still think like it still to me is like saying like I feel like the message is like you can't repress male sexuality. Like you like I think the reason we like Spock over Kirk is because Spock is logical and able to like keep it in his pants and like do what needs to be done, whereas Kirk is just like a sleazeball. And in this, it's like, oh, you think Spock's so great? Well, you do just see what he's like every 7 years, and then you won't like him so much. And it's like, I think, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's just trying to, like, state that ideal of a, like, rational guy is totally fictional. You know what I mean? Like even in the fiction, it's not possible. Amok, 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 amok.